Of diplomatic activity with bilateral meetings today to try and thrash out any problems and work on solutions. And this morning, Gordon Brown and President Obama spent 2 hours in talks at Downing Street, followed by a joint news conference.
President Obama said their discussions had been productive, but conceded that the nations involved would not be able to agree on every point.
Well, this afternoon, President Obama met the Russian president, Mr. Medvedev. The two leaders agreed to reopen negotiations about reducing nuclear warheads. They'll be the first such talks for more than a decade.
Obama is at the moment holding talks with the Chinese president. In the past hour, the White House announced that the president plans to visit China later this year.
And then at around 4:30 this afternoon, the French President Nicolas Sarkozy and the German Chancellor Angela Merkel will hold a joint press conference. Mr. Sarkozy has, of course, threatened to walk out of tomorrow's summit unless there is a deal on tough new regulations of global finance.
President Obama may not want to hog the limelight, but on this, his first overseas trip, that's just the way it goes. Whitehall locked down as the presidential motorcade, flown in for the occasion, sweeps into Downing Street. A businesslike wave at the start of a critical 2 days, a summit with the loftiest possible agenda. What are you going to achieve? A shouted question as the couples dance into position. If the president's famous body language alone could answer, it would say, plenty. For Gordon and Sarah, on a sunlit morning, the privilege of being the first Europeans to bask in a presidential glow that has yet to fade. A huge security operation in the capital today, but the crowds here come to greet, not barrack the president.
I love him very, very, very much. I would not have missed this opportunity.
I had to come down here. I've watched everything on television about him and wanted to see him in the flesh.
Another couple savouring the moment, the Foreign Secretary David Miliband and his counterpart Hillary Clinton, with plenty on their plate today. This huge gathering a chance to address a host of global issues. More warmth on display inside. With tough talking ahead, no qualms here about displaying the strength of the special relationship. The Prime Minister happy to be shepherded from his own room. Out of Downing Street's narrow confines and into the opulent grandeur of the Foreign Office, a chance for the two men to set out their stall.
Your first 70 days in office have changed America, and you've changed America's relationship with the world.
Plenty of mutual appreciation, and then this confident assertion from the host.
We are within a few hours, I think, of agreeing a global plan for economic recovery and reform.
And to those Europeans who worry about being steamrollered by Britain and America, words of reassurance and resolve from the President.
G20 nations are appropriately pursuing their own approaches. And as Gordon indicated, we're not going to agree on every point. I came here to put forward our ideas, but I also came here to listen, not to lecture. Having said that, we must not miss an opportunity to lead.
Determination then, and a sense of shared purpose. Two leaders who know that this meeting cannot be seen to fail. But others will have their say before the day is out. The summit hasn't even started. Paul Adams, BBC News.
Well, let's speak to our political correspondent, Ross Hawkins, who's there outside Downing Street now. So, Ross, we saw the pictures there of Gordon Brown and Barack Obama earlier, but plenty more activity since then.
Oh, plenty. The Russian President Dmitry Medvedev is in there now, finishing off his talks. This is a rather high-profile parking lot at the moment. The Russian presidential limousine is purring away behind me. Before too long, the president will go back behind those curtains and return away from Downing Street and away from these talks with Gordon Brown. A series of talks here, a very interesting cast, this very significant cast this as well. No sooner will the Russian president be out of that door and on his way than the Chinese President Hu Jintao will be in for talks. Very significant there. The Chinese, of course, have foreign policy reserves, which the world wants to get its hands on. The Chinese, in return, would like a far greater voting right on the IMF. There is a great deal to be discussed, notwithstanding the amount of diplomatic work that would have gone on before this summary and these meetings kicked off.
I wonder if events inside will pause at around 4:30 when Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy decide to give a press conference, because what they say might be quite important with tomorrow in mind, mightn't it?
It might be very important indeed. I find it hard to believe on a day like today Gordon Brown will spend much time clustered around the television taking the words, but I'm sure he'll be very fully briefed. The debate there, very simply, fiscal stimulus, can it be afforded? This came up at Prime Minister's questions, of course. The Conservatives say the Governor of the Bank of England says Britain can't afford anything more by way of fiscal stimulus. Germany and France aren't sure that they can afford much more by way of fiscal stimulus, and it is that sort of stimulus that the Prime Minister Gordon Brown is backing. Now, interestingly, some of the people he's seen today, that he'll see today, very much support that idea. Taro Aso of Japan supports the idea. Manmohan Singh of India, who he's met, he supports the idea. But there are voices here who say we have to limit how much we spend on these measures because we can't just keep on putting ourselves into debt. That, if you like, is the economic debate at the heart of this summit, and it's one which those two leaders, the French and the German leader, will feed into at that very significant press conference at around 4:30.
And so much of today is about trying to smooth the way for tomorrow, really, isn't it? Because in time terms, quite apart from anything else, they haven't got a great deal of time tomorrow to actually do detailed discussing, have they?
Very little time to actually get down to too much discussion tomorrow, which is why the work that was done by diplomats beforehand is important. It's why these meetings matter. And actually, it's why working dinner tonight here at Downing Street matters, where the world's leaders will sit around over a dinner cooked by Jamie Oliver. Their spouses will sit in a separate room and they will be getting on with business. Yes, it will be a social event, but there will be discussions to be had there. The threat of walkouts from the French. Well, Gordon Brown said that Nicolas Sarkozy will be there at the start of the first course and at the end of the meal. That's his promise. So hopefully they'll all manage to sit together and talk nicely until dessert, and somewhere between the starters and the Jamie Oliver prepared dessert, the hope will be they'll come up with some sort of diplomatic answers to those key economic issues which split some of them fairly fundamentally in opinions.
Let's hope so. Thank you, Ross. Ross Hawkins there outside number 10.
President Obama